Okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead now. Hello and welcome to another TV Central podcast. My name is Aaron Ryan. Well, the pensioners love it, the rest of us ignore it. And no, I'm not talking about Al Jolson music classics, I'm talking about our ABC, or at least the former ABC. In the 21st century, the ABC has moved from an elderly favourite wrapped in a Scotch finger and a cup of tea to one, could argue, the leading innovators in broadcast television in this country, with demographics ranging from 3 to 103, and now more often than not, everything in between. The ABC is recording massive audience numbers for shows like The Gruen Transfer and Spicks and Specks, has many edgy cult faves on ABC2, an innovative and interactive kids channel in ABC3, has introduced the first free-to-air 24-hour news channel, and has the best online interactive television service on the net in comparison to the commercial offerings. The ABC is leading the country in more ways than one, so who better to talk to over a nice cup of tea and a Monte Carlo than the Director of Television at the ABC, Mr. Kim Dalton, who joins us now. Welcome, Kim, to TV Central.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation ahead.
So, I mean, a little bit tongue-in-cheek in that intro there, but I'm pretty sure 10 years ago the ABC was for people over 60. What's happened?
Well, look, we should be careful not to exaggerate that statement, and I accept the spirit in which you made it and that it is tongue-in-cheek. But the ABC has a long and honourable history, of course, of doing projects which are a bit edgy, which certainly led the way in Australian comedy, I think, for many, many years. And I think in a way we're just continuing that tradition, perhaps with some more focus to it, and perhaps pushing the boundaries at times, a little bit further, but as appropriate in the way, I suppose, that the whole of Australian society has moved forwards in the 21st century.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have had big audiences, lately with things like Spicks and Specks, The Gruen Transfer, and recently Yes We Canberra. Obviously, that's the Wednesday night lineup, including great demos, of course. I just wanted you to tell us about those results and why you think they're resonating with audiences of all demographics.
Well, I think that I have a great belief in the diversity, the intelligence, the level of interest that is out there amongst Australia's population across the ages for interesting, stimulating, engaging television. I think that Gruen Nation and Yes We Canberra were talking points right through the election. I think that people got to hear about it, and our promotional publicity program around it, so that people knew it was happening, and they came to it and watched it in huge numbers because of its intelligence, because of the intelligence of the program, as well as, of course, being great entertaining shows. Television does that as a medium. Television does that so well, and it is so immediate, and it's so connected to people's society, and there is an audience out there hungry for this sort of material.
That's one of the shows you talked about, Gruen Nation, of course, the Gruen Transfer. I mean, it was a big decision to drop the Glass House when that was on. You had a lot of angry fans out there. Would you say you were pretty lucky that it worked out okay in the end? I mean, being with the success of Gruen Transfer, obviously Will Anderson transferred over to that. Do you think you're pretty lucky that worked out? Because you did have a few angry fans there.
Well, I wouldn't use the word luck. I think it was the right decision. It was good planning. Television schedules need to change. You can't just leave them sitting there and have the same show. And I guess I took the view when I took on the job here and looking across what we were doing that the Glass House was a good program and it worked well and it had a very loyal audience. But at the same time, it was time to refresh and renew, and we don't have unlimited resources. If we were going to do something new, we had to stop doing something old, and that's the decision we made. I have no regrets about it, and I think it was the right decision. And it's been great to be working with Will again, who I think is one of the outstanding comedy talents in Australia. And I think that Gruen Transfer and Gruen Nation has given Will a platform which has taken him to a new level as a host, but as a host of a show which involves really fast moving comic, but nonetheless very serious engagement around very serious issues.
Yeah, his Logie nominations as well, I guess, speak about that. The fans are voting for him, very popular. With the rest of your Wednesday night schedule, is there anything else you can tell us about that's coming up in that sort of Wednesday slot? I know United States of Tara's back, but anything else coming up?
Well, look, the highlight, I guess, from our point of view between now and the end of the year is going to be the third season of Librarians. It's a show that it's another area, and it's another sort of great example of risk-taking from the ABC. We actually worked with the team, Robin and Wayne, the creative team on that, and with the support of, I must stress, of Screen Australia, who had a special fund there for new talent and taking some risks. So they put some money into it. The first show was quite edgy and different, and people came to it, and audiences really built. We went into a second series, and now we're doing a third series, and so that's I think people will come back to that. They've really enjoyed the previous series, and I think that's going to be a highlight. And of course, that's 8 weeks, and will run us up pretty much towards the end of the year.
Yeah. With all these sort of shows that are coming up and being quite popular and all that kind of stuff, you often hear comments from some places in the media or wherever that the ABC is not sort of fulfilling its charter obligations, or it's forgetting about certain sections of its schedule, and it's just going for popularity, going down the 7, 9, 10 sort of ways. I mean, in my personal opinion, you're a service to the Australian people, so surely if you're servicing the mass majority with credible news and a bunch of programs they want to watch, then are you not doing exactly what you're supposed to? Or
well, I think it's important that we get a balance, and the whole process of getting a balance means that inevitably you never sit exactly in the middle. You're always sort of leaning to one side or the other, and therefore there'll be some criticism or some observations or critique, I suppose, around our efforts to achieve a balance. But the balance has to be between relevance and engagement, and that, in a way, the result around that, of course, is very large audiences. I think a program like Gruen Nation spoke to a huge number of people because it talked to them as very intelligent people who wanted to be entertained, but at the same time who wanted to have a series of insights and go on a journey through that election process as they watched it dissected and discussed over the 4-week period. And it was very popular programming. But we can't take everything in that sort of way. I mean, we can't. If you go perhaps arguably to the other extreme and some of the arts programming that we're doing, that we do. It's written into our charter that we must have a commitment to some areas of the arts. I think that our commitment is in fact quite broad across the visual arts, across literature, across film, across music, across dance, and I think it's a very important thing for the national broadcaster to do in various sorts of ways, and to do it boldly, and to do it up front, and to put it in our prime time schedule. But in the process of doing that, we'd be crazy to be thinking that we're going to get 1.5 million people tuning in to watch some of these programs. The audience just isn't there. There just aren't those numbers of people who are interested in engaging with that type of programming. But we should do it, and I've picked a couple of extremes, and there's a whole range of programming and genres and audiences in between. And I guess part of the role of my job and working with my senior team is to pick our way through that whole landscape. And in the process, sometimes we'll please a whole lot of people, and other times we'll probably irritate a whole lot of people.
One of those other genres there that I guess is not as hugely popular, or one would think, is documentaries. But I mean, the Thursday night docos on the ABC have actually proved to be, well, there's been some beauties lately, but they've actually also rated quite well. I was just wondering where you source these documentaries from, and how do you pick whether they're on ABC or ABC One or ABC Two? And I think the reason I asked that, I've seen a few beauties lately on ABC Two that I thought, geez, these could have gone on the main channel. You had 5 weddings, 5 funerals. That was very interesting. And a couple of nights ago, Baby Beauty Queens. I mean, I wrote I wrote a good review about that actual program, but geez, that made me quite angry. But it was a very good documentary. I was just wondering about those, how you pick what channel they go on to, and also where you source them from.
Well, there are 2 areas of documentary. Obviously, there's the ones that we buy in, the ones we acquire internationally, and then the ones that we commission locally with the local independent documentary production sector. I mean, on the acquisition front, mostly the documentaries you're talking about on ABC2 are acquired documentaries. I think that they do achieve significant audiences in that multi-channel universe, but they're not the sort of audiences that we would expect to get on ABC One. And I guess what ABC Two, that Wednesday night documentary slot that we've developed on ABC Two, it's just an opportunity to put some documentaries on which, either because of their form or the way they're treating the subject or the subject matter itself, we know is of more specialist or more focused interest, and just won't get the sorts of won't have the sort of broader appeal which ABC One does have. And so that's the decision-making process that we go through in very broad terms. Where do we source our documentaries, the Australian documentaries from? Well, these days we source them entirely from the independent documentary community. When I first arrived, we were doing some work with the independent documentary scene, but we were also still involved in quite a lot of internal documentary production. I made the decision that I felt that really we had a very vibrant, developing, sophisticated independent documentary production sector. There were also diverse sources of additional funding out there through government agencies, through the tax system that the government has in place to support the film industry, and of course internationally there's a whole lot of money out there internationally for investment in documentaries. So we've shifted all our documentary production to working with the Australian independent sector, and I think that the range of documentaries that have been commissioned and been produced by that sector over the last 3 or 4 years has been quite extraordinary, quite remarkable. And yes, you pointed to some we've just shown recently. I mean, the series Making of Modern Australia, for instance, I think.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm a baby boomer, so I found myself glued to the screen watching that. It was a great series and full of resonance, I'm sure, for a very substantial part of our audience, but also beautifully made and significant and full of ideas and an interesting reflection on contemporary history, or reasonably contemporary history in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have been watching a few. The Modern Australia, that was fantastic. Well, we've talked about Wednesday night, Thursday night. I just wanted to talk about the sort of 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. slot that you're scheduling. Now, we've heard that 10's now going to move into news as well. So 10, 9, 7, even SBS does news at 6:30. So you're the only one offering an alternative on the main channels at least. Just wondering if there's going to be a different approach next year now that you know that you're the sole provider with doing something different, or is it same old, doing the same schedule again next year?
Look, I think it's an interesting move that 10 have made, along with launching their new channel 11, and I think that this move does present us with opportunities. There are people out there who don't want to watch the news, and it's something that we've certainly started to think about and talk about. And yes, I think that we will look to reworking and revamping just what we do between that 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock slot next year. As you know, we've got a new Brendan Dahill's come in and is now the controller of ABC One, and that's something that he is looking at. And I think that we'll certainly be, the decision we make and the strategy we employ there will be around the audience that does exist who don't want to watch news.
Yeah. Well, in with the new there with something new maybe next year, and out with the old with the Bill. The finale just aired in the UK this week, and I guess really is an end of an era in terms of the show and its longevity with the ABC. And I mean, can you tell us how important the show has been to the ABC, and also maybe some air dates with a two-part finale and the farewell special coming up?
Well, the Bill has been on the ABC for 24 years. It's moved around, as you probably know, in our schedule, and it's been on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, and now it's on Saturday nights, and playing it out as a double bill on Saturday nights. So it's there were times when it used to be sitting up there as our second or third regularly, consistently sitting up there as our second or third highest rating program. So it's a program that. And as a program, of course, it's developed. I mean, you can't stand still as a program for 24 years. So if you went back and looked at some of the very early episodes of the Bill and look at it today, and look at the way that just the whole tone and feel and the sorts of stories and the way those stories are told has changed. It's been quite a journey with the Bill. However, the decision was made by ITV that they were not going to continue with it, and we knew this. We've known this now for quite a long time. Yes, the last episode, double episode, will go to air on October the 16th, and then it'll be followed the following week on the 23rd with a documentary. It'll be really the finale of the Bill, so it'll be a documentary that will look back across that history of the Bill and some of the characters and some of the moments and some of the significance of that program in television history.
Okay. So, sorry, can I confirm those dates for you? Because it's just another site was reporting something different. They had the two-part finale over the 16th and the 23rd, and then the documentary on the 30th. But you're saying it's
a double ep. The last ep, it's a double ep on October the 16th, followed on October the 23rd with a documentary finale. Excellent.
So, what will Saturday nights look like on the ABC without the Bill? I mean, that's been on Saturday nights for.
You'll have to come back on October the 30th to find that out, and just keep tuning in to see how it unfolds. But look, obviously we will be making some changes. There's obviously going to be some new programming coming through there. We'll get through to the end of the year and across summer, and we'll go into next year with a different approach to Saturday nights on ABC One.
So probably a rule out though to repeats of the Bill though.
I don't think we'll go straight into 24 years of repeats. It's a thought. It's a thought, and I'll certainly feed that back to Brendan. But I don't think we will go straight into that.
Okay. Just wanted to talk about news for a moment. Well, first of all, 9 and 7 News. I mean, they get all the talk in the media in regards to news and current affairs, how they're rating and the competition between each other, the exposure, the profile, the lineup of their news, the quality of their news, etc., etc. So I was just wondering if the ABC actually has a news service, or if you've got any plans to air a bit of news that might raise your profile a bit.
It's a thought, yeah. No, it's a thought. Something we should think about. And maybe the 7 o'clock slot would be not a bad slot.
Not bad.
After everybody else has finished with theirs. Look, it's a very vibrant, competitive, dynamic space. The news space. There's a lot of news out there on free-to-airs, and then of course on pay TV you've got Sky with their 24-hour news service, plus the international 24-hour news services which come in. So there's a lot of news out there on TV. The ABC, I think, we run. Well, we certainly have the largest news gathering capacity in the country, as well as we have obviously a news gathering capacity across internationally as well, with a number of international bureaus. We've got both news and current affairs as well, and as you know, we launched a 24-hour news channel just a few months ago. We don't set out to be the top-rating news program. We don't set out to certainly don't set out to be tabloid about our news in any sense whatsoever, and to chase ratings with it. I think what we do is we attempt to be certainly independent, to engage with issues seriously, and to deliver to the Australian population a broad news service about national events and local events, on state-based local events where they are of significance and importance, and also, of course, some international news about what's happening in the world and where it's appropriate, where Australia fits into that. So I think it's a critical role that a public broadcaster such as the ABC has to play. I think it's always interesting that when something like elections come around, then you see our news figures going up quite significantly, and I think that just tells you that when events of national significance like this are happening, and where people are looking for a reporting of that news in an independent and thoughtful and rigorous way, then they come to the ABC. I mean, there's no better example than of course, on election night, when notwithstanding the significant resources that the other networks put into their coverage, and the resources they put into promoting their coverage, the ABC did what the ABC arguably has always done, and is just to provide a very thoughtful and diverse but very thorough coverage of the events as they unfolded, and of course the ratings told the story.
Well, I mean, you're saying that you don't chase popularity, but I mean, if you have a look at some of the ratings, I mean, ABC News either wins its time slot at 7 o'clock or is very close. I mean, it seems to be a four-way tussle every night. I mean, either 7, 9, 10 or the ABC can win that slot, and if you're coming fourth, it's usually only by a handful of viewers. So it's sort of neck and neck. I mean, the 7:30 report last night did 900k, and things like Late Line, Media Watch, Four Corners, they're all doing well. And as you said, the election coverage, people are tuning to the ABC not just by a small percentage, but by a large percentage. So I'm just wondering why the ABC, in terms of news, seems to be almost excluded from media profiling in Australia, because it really is about 7 and 9. I mean, if you read the different sections of the media and media columns and things like that.
Well, but I think that a lot of the media commentary it's very much, and understandably, it's very focused on that competitive space that's around the big networks, the commercial networks, 7, 9, and 10. I mean, they're engaged in a very competitive environment, and that's absolutely what their business model is about, and they all do it very well. The ABC sits outside of that, and I suppose when people are writing about these sorts of things and reflecting upon it and commentary on it, it's where the competition is. I mean, we're not in that space competing in the same way. What we're doing is getting on and doing what a good public broadcaster should do, which is to offer in the news space, offer a good, strong, independent, accurate, but well presented news service, and that's what we do. And I think it's appreciated by Australian, or by a section of the by the Australian population who are very loyal to it and who often, run their evenings around our 7 o'clock news or set their watches by it. And
Sure.
that's what we'll go on and keep doing. I wouldn't read too much, and it certainly doesn't fuss me very much that we're not part of the media commentary around news, around the coverage of news and current affairs.
Now, I mean, you say you don't look over your shoulder at the commercial offerings and remain independent, but just for this question, I'd love your opinion. Being a director of television in that role, with Channel 10 entering the news fray. In two recent podcasts actually, with Peter Meakin at 7 and Mark Kelvin at 9, with another media outlet, they basically alluded to the fact that they don't consider 10 a real player in news, and it would not even concern them if 10 took them on. So 10 will still do their winning 5 p.m. news hour at the moment, and then it appears that Jennifer Byrne will do a 6 p.m. bulletin, and then there'll be local bulletins around the country at 6:30. So, I mean, just as an observer, I mean, do you think 7 and 9 actually have anything to worry about, and should they be more concerned than they are actually appearing to be at the moment?
Well, look, as director of ABC TV, I'm always very cautious of, joining that commentary we were just talking about before about how other networks are doing and who's winning and who's losing and who's doing better on the competition straights. But, I have no doubt that, certainly 7 and 9 are the leaders in that news area in around that time, and they do what they do very well. And 10, it'll be a challenge for 10 to come in there and take them on in terms of the history and tradition play a big role in all this too. The audiences get very used to, and there's a whole degree of sort of both, a mixture of habit and loyalty build up, I think, around people's choices about what they view and who they turn to get their news. So I think there's no doubt there'll be a real challenge for 10 to do it, but at the same time, they've obviously given a lot of thought to it, and whatever they do, I'm sure they'll do well, and we'll have to look back in 6 or 12 months' time and see what the end result is. I guess my point is that we're not part of that engagement, and we don't run news during that area, and we'll during that time slot, and now that everybody else is, it sort of presents, I suppose, an interesting opportunity for us and some potential, and we'll just keep on doing our news block and current affairs block between 7 and 8.
Lovely. Let's go on to something completely different. ABC2 now. At the start of the podcast, I did mention about the ABC being for the oldies, at least in the past. But let's look at the ABC2 offerings at the moment. Ab Fab, The Office, Live at the Basement, Torchwood, Sanctuary, Dirty Jobs, Daily Show, Outnumbered, Misfits. That was an absolute classic, that show. Breaking Bad, Deadwood. I'm watching this stuff, and I wouldn't consider myself old at all. So tell me about the focus you have on sort of the 18 to... I'm guessing this is an 18 to 30 crowd you're looking at. Just tell us a bit more about ABC2.
Look, ABC2 skews younger than ABC1, and it skews more male. However, we haven't set out with a particular demographic focus on all this. What we've done is we've said that, and I must stress here, we're in a period of transition with ABC2 as well, as we've just sort of put in place a whole new operating model, a whole new way that we're going about the programming and acquisition and commissioning of programs, and we now have a controller of ABC2 in Stuart Menzies, who's stepped up into that position. It's a new area of work for him. He's come out of our documentary area where he's done a fantastic job over the last few years, and he's now taking on the programming of ABC2. So, I think expect to see some changes as well, particularly once we go into next year. But I think that the broader and general approach that we've taken to ABC2 is that it allows us to provide some complementary programming, or program which is complementary to ABC1 on the one hand, but it also allows us to show quite a range of programming which is which will inevitably appeal to smaller audiences, but which is very high quality, interesting, challenging, hasn't been on for a long time and deserves a repeat. It gives us an opportunity to do that and just accept that there is a broadly based audience out there who are looking for something different and are at times looking for some of the contemporary drama that's coming out of the US, for instance, which has to be some of the best drama being made in the world at the moment. And you can't put it on ABC One. There just isn't. There isn't a sufficient audience to justify that. But I think as a public broadcaster, it's great to put some of those programs on and make them available to our audience. In the process, I think that, I don't know, because they're a bit more edgy, a bit more risky, a bit more challenging in some respects, then, as I say, we end up skewing a bit younger and it skews male as well.
Is there anything that Stuart Menzies has coming up on ABC2 that you can mention? Any titles that you're aware of?
Well, look, I'm not going to reveal his approach or what he's got in the bag or where he's going. In any case, he's only been doing the job for 3 or 4 weeks, so I think you'll have to wait for that. I think that the schedule is largely set for between now and the end of the year, but there will be some changes. We have increased the commissioning budget that's available to ABC2, so Stuart will be commissioning. It won't be a huge amount, but it will be an increased amount of local content coming on ABC2 during next year, and some of that I think will be, again, really worth watching and keeping an eye open for.
Sure. Well, ABC2 to ABC3, how do you think the channel is tracking since launch, and have you achieved what you wanted to achieve thus far?
Look, I think ABC3 has been, it's an incredible success. And the way that we've actually now able to get some definition around both our preschool programming and our school age programming, because we have ABC3 and we can separate those out, means that the ABC is back where it should be, which is really the dominant force in children's broadcasting in Australia. There's no doubt that the networks all show some very good children's content. They have to show a certain amount of Australian drama, and that drama is of a very high quality. But and over on the pay platform, there's some very strong children's offerings coming from the Nickelodeons and Disneys and Cartoon Networks, and they all have they all have very loyal audiences and significant audiences. But we went to the government across a period of a couple of years and said we think that there should be a dedicated children's channel available on the free-to-air platform. It should have a real focus on Australian content, and we firmly believe that there was an audience out there for it, and I think that there is no doubt we have clearly established that there is an audience out there for it. And when we combine that with our children's offering on ABC2 and ABC One, as I say, we are, and we should be. We're the public broadcaster. It's something that a public broadcaster should absolutely be doing: is delivering a commercial-free, a focus on Australian content, on Australian voices and Australian stories to our children's audience.
There's no doubt there's a broad schedule there on ABC3, but it must be great receiving some positive responses from some of these water cooler shows, I suppose. I mean, a lot of kids talking about Dance Academy and Prank Patrol, if I just point out those two. So, yeah, I mean, that must be great with it, with receiving that response.
Oh, look, there's no doubt, again, when I got to the ABC, 4.5, nearly 5 years ago now, I think for a variety of reasons, and certainly not the people who were working in the children's department at the time, who were very committed and doing a great job with the resources that they had access to, but there's no doubt that our children's area had to put it politely, fallen into disrepair. It was a bit unloved, and there's no doubt that it was under-resourced. And I think with the injection of funds that we managed to get from the government in our last triennial funding round, what it's done is it's allowed us to go out there and start to work with the best of Australia's children's television producers, and Australian children's television producers are as good as anywhere else in the world, and start to commission a whole range of new shows, including dramas such as Dance Academy, which I think is an extraordinary achievement. And the production values, the writing, the performances, the stories of that particular show are just fantastic, and of course it took off once we put it to air.
I just want to ask you specifically about a show that we've just mentioned, Dance Academy. Now, Home and Away and Neighbours have got quite a lot of media attention with the gay storylines, and I believe Seven had to end up editing out some parts and all of that kind of thing. Now, Dance Academy's slipped in a kiss between two males. Now, I thought that might have caused a big ruckus, not so much just because it's a gay kiss, but because it's on ABC3. This is a kids channel type of thing, but it seems to have gone pretty, I don't know, it's just gone under the radar, so to speak. And I'm just wondering if you've received any negative feedback about that, and were you cautious about that storyline, or were you told about that storyline, and was there any talk of cutting it, or?
No to all of that. I think it's very. I mean, we were not deluged with complaints. We did not get. It did not result in complaints coming through to the network. But I think that it's very important with a show such as Dance Academy to, when we're developing contemporary dramas like that, then those contemporary dramas have to reflect the society that the children live in. And the reality is, again, in the 21st century, in most school environments and environments where younger people operate, then issues around sexuality are live issues, and they're on the agenda. They're no longer hidden away and ignored. And I think you just have to. The whole point of these sorts of dramas is to deal with and create an environment that young children can recognise that it's an environment that bears some relationship to the environment that they step out into every day. So I think it was very sensitively done. There was no sense of shock or unnecessary drama around it. It was just absolutely an organic part of the story, an organic part of the characters, and the character development, and I think our audience responded to it in that sort of way.
Sure. Before I leave ABC3, I just had to quickly throw it out there. A few requests from people that knew that I was doing a podcast with you, that they'd like to see Heartbreak High on be released on DVD. So I put that out there for you.
Okay. Well, that's not really up to the ABC. That's up to the producers, of course. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. It went very well for us. It was great to see such a classic piece of Australian television up on our screens again. And I thought, I didn't watch the whole thing, but the episodes that I watched, I thought it still played really well, and it's a great piece of television.
Yeah. ABC News 24. Just general question: how you believe you're going with that at the moment, since its launch? It's obviously quite new.
Yeah, well, look, I'm very pleased with the results. It's going very well. As you know, we launched it around the time of the election, and when there's something like an election on, and then of course the very unusual results of that election, the fact that the whole issue of government remains unresolved, means that there's an added interest and attention and focus to political issues and issues around news. So it's not a bad time to be launching a news channel. But I think it's a very welcome addition to the free-to-air television space, and people have responded accordingly. And we do have such extraordinary resources in terms of news gathering and the content which is created, and just developing the processes and approaches and workflows so that you can access that material and get it onto the screen, I think is a great thing. I mean, I don't know, I was just at home yesterday morning, just before coming to work, and watching News Breakfast, and the Treasurer, Wayne Swan, was doing an interview, I think, with Fran Kelly on Radio National Breakfast, and so, Virginia is able to sort of say, oh, look, the Treasurer's in our radio studio in wherever he was, in Brisbane or Canberra or somewhere or other, and we're going to cross live now, and you sort of flip over and cross live, and there it is. I mean, I think just having, it's enormous level of public investment in the ABC, and whereas a while ago that interview would have gone to air on Radio National and anybody listening to it would have heard it, that having the technology and the ability and the space within our schedule just to be able to cut live to something like that and deliver it also across a whole other platform, I think is very exciting. I think it's innovative, and it's something that our audiences are responding very positively to.
You're speaking about going live. Obviously, in the media there has been some criticisms about not covering certain events live. I'm just wondering if you think those criticisms were justified, or just people complaining a bit too much.
Look, I think that the concerns that people expressed and the discussion that went on was entirely appropriate, and I never shy away or have a problem with people having these sorts of discussions about what the ABC does or doesn't do, and a discussion around how well we are doing them. I think the point that we made a number of times, or those of us who are asked, and certainly the internal discussions which went on around all this, was that we were doing something very new. We launched a 24-hour news channel, and it takes a bit of time to bed these things down, and when you look back, you sort of may well be thinking, well, I wish we'd done this way, or we should have cut in then, or we should have covered this live and dropped that particular program over there. But these are all things that you can go through dress rehearsals for however long you like, but once you're up there and you're running live, then it takes a bit of time to build that knowledge and experience, and I think that and the technical expertise as well. I mean, there's no doubt that in the early days of News 24, there were certain technical issues and technical challenges, and sometimes we rose to them and did it really well, and they're the ones that nobody noticed. And then other times there were mistakes and glitches, and they're the ones that appear on our other program, Media Watch. But at least we critique ourselves. But I think overall, the quality of the programming that we've been putting out, the volume of the programming, the production values, and the degree of expertise, which is both journalistic and production expertise, which is sitting behind the production of this channel, is quite extraordinary. And I think it's been overall, I think that we've done extremely well.
That was actually a good interview there on Media Watch, though, with the boss talking to David Murray on his final show before he goes on leave. But
Jonathan Holmes.
Jonathan Holmes. Sorry, not David. I'm going back a little bit, aren't I?
That's right. That's right. You're showing your age there.
Oh goodness. But just in terms of the 24-hour channel, how do you target if it's achieved what it's achieved? I mean, do you look at ratings? I mean, if it was sitting at, say, 1% in 3 years' time, do you go, well, it's still doing its job and we're still going to invest money and resources in it? Or, I mean, what does 1% actually mean, in terms of its overall? I mean, how do you track that kind of thing?
Well, we do track it. I mean, we get, just as we do for all our other channels, and as well as that, we get the figures of all our, of the other networks and the other digital multi-channels and indeed all the subscription television channels. So we get huge amounts of data rolling in every morning about how many people are watching individual shows and individual channels. You've got to be very careful about not getting sort of sucked into that too much, because after all, we're here to deliver a public service. We're not here to get certain audiences and certain numbers of eyeballs on our screens and sell them to advertisers. That's not what we do. That's what commercial broadcasters do. Look, I think raw numbers, whether it's 0.5% or 1% or 1.5%, is important, because I think that gives you some sense of just how well you are engaging with your audiences. I think that if you look at, this is all new territory, and of course, we've still got whatever it is, 25-30% of the population who don't have access to these channels yet. But I think that the performance of our multi-channels is good. I'm very happy with it. I think the fact that we're on average sitting, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, sometimes on ABC News 24 is good. I think though that the other and I think realistically for a news channel, if we were in 2 or 3 years' time consistently averaging 1.5–2% audience share, I think that would be probably pretty extraordinary on a 24-hour news channel to be getting that sort of share. I mean, you'd have to feel like there were just constant rolling events of national and international significance out there to attract people's attention at that sort of level. So, but I think where we are at the moment is good. But I think the other measure, which is actually even more important, is reach. I think that what our real focus over the next couple of years is to be making sure that the Australian population, as much as possible, the whole of the Australian population, do know that if at any point during the day they want to get a news update, or if there is some event of really national significance or international significance taking place, they know that they can come to the ABC, they can come to ABC TV and tune in, and they will get high quality, independent, rigorous and robust reporting on this. And I think that what we will be really watching with interest and tracking over the next 12 months or so is just how many Australians every week or every month, whatever, actually brush up against, actually have contact with us, actually dip in, engage with the ABC, have a look at one of our news bulletins or news shows or interview programs, and then perhaps go away again. They're not. It's the very nature of the show. The very nature of the program. They're not necessarily going to sit there and watch it for an hour or watch it for an hour and a half. But I think what we want to be able to do is to have a service there which as many as possible Australians do make use of.
Yeah. I just had a question that just came to mind when you're talking about the rolling news. I mean, there was some criticisms about the news story with the gunman on the bus, wasn't it? And whether you should stay on air or not stay on air. I mean, do you have any? I won't ask anything specific about that, but just any comments that you had about that.
Oh, look, I think, that was the judgment of the people running the channel at the time. I don't question their judgment. I know that there was, I think these sorts of things are in the heat of the moment as it's unfolding. They're difficult judgments, and I don't question the judgment that was made at all. It was on a news channel, on a 24-hour news channel. People have to choose to go there. This wasn't on a main bulletin at 7 o'clock at night when the whole family might be sitting around watching, and you might expect a different set of concerns, a different sort of editorial perspective to be brought to bear, and a different sort of range of filtering, I suppose, brought to bear. So no, I don't question the decisions that were made around that.
I didn't want to ask too many questions about that only because I actually believe it's actually all quite ridiculous. It's I mean it's a news item on a news channel. I mean if you had have been airing kids programming and then cut into the kids programming, now we're now going to be showing the latest news. I mean that would be inappropriate. But you've got an audience that are watching a rolling news channel effectively to get news. And of course some of that news is going to be confronting. There's going to be hostage situations and volcanoes and people getting killed and floods. I mean, you can't sort of shy away from that. I mean, the audience on the news channel is expected, I suppose, to be more mature. I mean, the kids aren't going to be watching, 5-year-old kids aren't going to be watching ABC News 24. But anyway, I'll move on to quickly onto iView. I mean, in my opinion, it has to be the best network setup and player on the market. You're the first to do that. I mean, tell us how often it's being used and what sort of programs are the most popular.
Well, look, I mean, it's been another success story, and we started off quite small. After all, we started off about 3 years ago now, initially just doing vodcasting, and we were vodcasting programs like The Chaser, and that slowly took off, and people got a taste for it, and then we watched what the BBC did with their iPlayer, and we felt that that's where this whole area of on-demand programming was going, and on-demand viewing was going, and so we developed our own player, iView, launched it a couple of years ago, and yes, it's been an incredible success. I think when we launched, we had something like 15 to 20 programs a week available. We now have, right at the moment, if you go onto iView, there's something like about 450 full episodes of programs available,
Yeah.
and we add in and around about 100 hours of new content every week. Just in terms of numbers, in July, we had over 5 million program views. So
Whoa.
people came up there and viewed, over 5 million programs, which was, I think very, very impressive. The top programs during August, The Chasers, Yes We Canberra, News, people use it, ABC News 24, people use it to access ABC News 24, Gruen Transfer, Spicks and Specs, I suppose both sort of very popular programs on TV, but also very popular programs there on iView. Q&A was one of our top programs viewed on iView. I think it's one of those programs that Q&A has been another remarkable success from a programming point of view, and I think if people miss it, then they like to be able to catch up on it. Those people who are interested in current affairs and local politics are interested. And the other one that's been very successful, perhaps a little bit more predictable, is Good Game. Our show for gamers. But inevitably you'd expect the audience for Good Game to be an audience very familiar with going online and watching things on their PC.
With the whole iView thing, and I guess with the commercial offerings, they've all got one now, some sort of play where you can catch up on shows. Now, I know you don't specifically look at ratings, but I mean, the commercial offerings say they don't believe that these sort of catch-up services would dilute the actual ratings of the people that are watching them on the telly. Now, it's just something I really can't get my head around. I mean, as an example, Media Watch, I watch that every single Tuesday morning before work on iView. I mean, I don't think ever since it's been on iView, I don't think I've ever watched it on the ABC, as in on the telly. Now, I'm not the only one that does this or watches programs because they're on iView or because they're on a catch-up service on a commercial offering. So, I mean, I just don't understand how that could not dilute ratings and take eyeballs off the TV.
Well, look, I think it's a complex equation. I mean, I think you're quite right. I think if you're a rusted-on Media Watch viewer, and whereas 12 or 18 months or so ago you used to watch it every Monday night on TV, and now you find you can watch it on iView, so you watch it on iView. then that's one less viewer we've got watching it on TV. From an ABC point of view, of course, that we don't care. That doesn't make any difference to us. The fact is you're watching Media Watch, so that's what we want to see. If you're a commercial broadcaster, then that's an issue, because it means that the real time they can reach you with an advertisement is when you're watching TV and you've got that particular focus on it and degree of concentration, which may or may not be the same if you've got some sort of pre-roll sitting there when you're rolling up onto your PC. But I think the reason I say it's a complex equation is because I don't think it's as simple as just saying, oh, what it's doing is it's shifting viewers off the TV screen onto the computer screen. There's no doubt that all these new services and new ways of getting your programming in some ways is leading to audience fragmentation. But at the same time, I think it's also leading to higher levels of consumption of screen-based content. I think that it leads, because of the convenience, it can allow for higher levels of continuity and engagement around programs, which means that people may well be moving backwards and forwards between different devices, and whereas you may have drifted off from the TV program, you can keep in touch with it and you may come back to watch it on TV. So I think it's actually... look, I think it poses. There's no doubt it poses challenges for my commercial colleagues, and they're challenges which are not the challenges a public broadcaster has to face. But I think that all of those people working in the commercial area in Australia and internationally are embracing and engaging with it. They have to embrace and engage with it, and I think to me, the key thing you have to do is you have to maintain contact with your audience. You must keep that relationship going with your audience. And if your audience are demanding, or if your audiences are getting used to being able to access their programs in different sorts of ways, then you've got to deliver that, and you've just got to work out how you keep up that relationship with them. And if you're a commercial broadcaster, how, as much as possible, you either monetize the new ways that they're looking at this content, or you use those new ways that they're looking at their content to bring them back and still engage with you in the more traditional ways of viewing.
Sure. Just before I round up, just can't really have a podcast with you without at least addressing this issue or giving you a chance to comment just on comments that have been made about the Media Hub Playout Centre and problems with that. I'm just wondering how you're sort of tracking that to iron out some of those problems, and any comments about that?
Oh, well, look, I think that clearly if you're the head of a network, you want, that final moment when your programs are transmitted and your schedule's transmitted and all the effort and energy that's gone into the programs themselves, but as well as the presentation of those programs, you want it to be absolutely seamless. However, having said that, the ABC's gone through a massive change in terms of the way the way it plays out its programs, the delivery of those programs, the way we get them from a schedule, a set of numbers on a schedule, through to physically playing it out and up on the satellite and out of the transmitters and onto people's TV screens. It's been a massive change. Where it used to happen in half a dozen regional centres around the country, it now happens out of one centre for the most part, one centre out of Sydney, and that's a huge effort, and I think that the people responsible for that have done a remarkable job. They've done it very successfully, and I think it was something we had to do. I think the way we were doing it was inefficient and overly costly, and as a public broadcaster, it was absolutely appropriate that we centralised the playout system. We went to a far more modern system and far more modern and appropriate system, and far more flexible. Along the way, there have been some teething problems. Well, yeah. So I'm not surprised that there've been some teething problems, but I think they're, in the scale of things, they're not great, and they're getting less and less, and the whole operation's becoming much smoother. So overall, I think it's been a very successful project.
Yeah. Just as a roundup, I just wanted to ask about the overall I guess, vision of ABC. I mean, obviously with success of iView. I think you were the first to do the second digital channel, weren't you, with ABC2, the kids channel, the news channel. Now you do it on a budget which I'm sure is a tenth of the size of 9, 10, and 7. Now I suppose, I mean, you will guide a lot of that being the director of television, but I mean, you just sort of wonder where all of this comes from. I mean, it's quite an extraordinary achievement to put all of this together, based on costs and stuff. And I mean, where does all of, is it just your team of people doing all this together, sitting in meetings, being creative? I mean, how do you nurture that environment? I'm just wondering how all of this, comes out in the end.
That's a big question, that one.
Ah,
Well, look, I certainly take a fair bit of responsibility for I suppose delivering or providing the leadership. I mean, when I came to the ABC almost 5 years ago, I think there were pockets within the ABC of people who were absolutely aware of the quite significant changes which were occurring as a result of digital technology, and that's really what it all comes down to. It's about digital technology and the interface between digital technology and broadcasting, and the opportunities that come as a result of that. When I got here, there were groups of people and individuals who were aware of that, but there was in my opinion, there was a lack of strategy around it at an organisational level or even at a TV divisional level. And I guess that's something that one of the reasons that interested me in the position was to look at what is a modern contemporary broadcaster in the digital era. And, I suppose across those 4.5, 5 years, we have gone from being a single analogue channel, which is what I was appointed to run, to what is now, as you said before, ABC1, ABC2, ABC3, ABC for Kids, ABC News 24. We're effectively running 5 channels, and then yes, we've introduced iView, and we've got a very expansive online offering, not just iView, but across the net, or a lot of our companion programs or interactive sites, the gateways and portals that we've set up in the arts area and the Indigenous area are also very, they're very people. They don't get commented on very much, but they're very important contributions that we make as a public broadcaster. The work that we're still doing in terms of mobile and getting our material onto mobile, iPads, there's no doubt over the next few years iPads are going to be, or tablets of one form or another, are going to be very, very popular. And I think the other frontier, which I think is very, very important, and the ABC has led the way in, of course, is in the whole area of connected TVs, that increasingly people are going to be able to expect to access their television material in an on-demand environment, but watch that material delivered straight to their TV set in their living rooms or in their bedrooms or wherever they happen to be watching TV. And the ABC's already doing that in a way that further ahead than any other broadcaster in Australia. We're doing that through the Sony PlayStation 3. The latest range of Bravias have got iView on them. We're talking to other manufacturers, and in the longer term, I hope that there will be an arrangement with Freeview via the Freeview EPG, which is just about to be launched, that will be another way of connecting into an on-demand service. So I think all of these, we employ very bright people here, and I certainly like to drive a culture within the division which is about engaging with technological opportunities and possibilities.
Just finally, I know we talked about, it was a bit tongue-in-cheek at the start about the ABC being the old people's channel, many, many years ago. But just as a personal experience, I guess, I mean, I just find it interesting that my grandma was always locked on the ABC. I mean, I don't even think she knew that Channel 10 existed. Now, she still does watch some ABC shows, but now she does a little bit of channel surfing, and we'll look around at some other offerings as well. And whereas I might have been locked on the commercial offerings, but now there's definitely some stuff on iView. I watch ABC Two. I watch some docos on ABC One. You know, I'm. What I'm thinking though is surely that's not just an isolated experience. It's a reflection of a lot of families that are now the whole family is coming to the ABC through some portal, whether it be one ABC 123 News, iView, and so on. I'm just wondering if that was a. I mean, you sort of answered that before. But I'm just wondering if that was a deliberate attempt by the ABC to say, you know, we're going to focus as well on young people, or was it just a change of attitude in society? You know, they'll just start channel surfing, and a byproduct of that is, you know, was just looking at the ABC. I mean, you sort of said at the start
Well,
that
you know, there's levels of complexity in all that. I mean, the television landscape and environment is changing, and the ABC has very actively and at times in a leadership way engage with that change. So audiences out there experience the change. There's more on offer there, but the ABC is actually at the forefront of introducing that change and expanding the offering. So,
sure.
you know, once again, I guess I would say from an ABC perspective, of course it's of course from in various times, raw numbers are important. It's very important to us, and it's great for us that when we put the 7 o'clock news to air every night, that we're getting over 1 million people watching it. It's a great achievement to put Gruen Nation to air and get 1.4 million people watching it. These are things that I think are impressive, and I think are achievements which we are deservedly very proud of. Having said that, that's not the main game as a public broadcaster. The main game as a public broadcaster is to offer a diverse service across information, news, education, entertainment, those sort of catchwords, I suppose, of public broadcasting, and offer them to the whole of the Australian public. And in that sense, the big issue for us, of course, is reach. It's reach across our demographics, it's reach geographically across the nation, it's reach across areas of interest, its reach across different sectors of the community. And our ability to do that when you're sitting there with 4 or 5 channels and you're fully exploiting the opportunities offered by platforms, whether they're online platforms or mobile platforms, then your ability to reach Australians is greatly enhanced. And I think that's what, at the ABC, that's what we've reached out to and embraced with absolute enthusiasm. And the results are impressive, if I say so myself. And I think we've done a great job at doing it. And I think that the public in general, our audiences, are very, you know, they're very pleased with what they're doing. They respond very positively, and they feel that the investment that's made in the ABC is being returned to them.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's definitely been an interesting conversation. Big fans of the ABC here at TV Central. I mean, I do at least a couple of reviews per week with some shows. We put up the media releases each day and following different stories and things like that. We'll continue to support the innovation and creativity of the ABC. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Aaron. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Kim Dalton, Director of the ABC there. That's it for this podcast. Join me for another one real soon. I'm Aaron Ryan for tvcentral.com.au. Bye for now.